missing everything.
Right, right. Um, so super excited for this session. Lucas is a certified financial planner, and this is something, it's a new thing for us to offer, but we're really excited to have him kind of share his insight and wisdom about, you know, as you all are transitioning careers and things into tech, just how to kind of be smart about your money and stuff. So I don't actually know, I haven't seen the content in advance, so this is going to be new for me too. I'm excited to see what you have, but yeah, I trust that it's going to be great. So with that, I guess, Lucas, I'll just kind of turn it over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Yep. And I prepared a presentation here while I've kind of been on paternity leave. Perfect. So everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. And looks like we have access to a chat here. Yep, thanks, Caitlin. Yep, yeah, I'm excited to be here. So feel free to submit questions throughout. There'll definitely be time at the end for Q&A, but I'm also fine. I know this stuff because I just talk about it nonstop and constantly handling different types of questions. So don't worry about throwing me off track unless you ask something like, or say something funny that might throw me off. But yeah, ask any questions that you have along the way. I'll tackle them if it makes sense. If I know I'm going to be hitting them later on in the slides, I'll just kind of mention like, yep, we're going to get to that. And I won't dive too deep at that particular moment. But yeah, today I'm excited. We're going to be talking about navigating finances during a career change. And we're going to dive in and kind of cover a whole bunch. Financial planning is a really broad, anything you can think of when you think about your life in some way kind of impacts finances, like whether you decide to buy new socks, what you're eating for breakfast, dinner, lunch. Like it's just pretty intense and crazy sometimes how money is just kind of a part of life at this point. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I think it just comes down to understanding it, having control over what you can control. And really it starts to become pretty easy after that point. So as Andrew mentioned, my name's Lucas Caceres. I'm a certified financial planner. I started Level Up Financial Planning. And so that's my kind of baby of a business. I also have, I'll kind of do this on the next slide here. I also have a second business that I started to kind of support Level Up Financial Planning, which is where I help my clients actually complete their taxes too. So started Level Up Financial Planning in 2017. That tax planning side, that was in 2020. So just a couple of years ago. I have a wife, 4 children, a dog. I live and love Colorado. I've been here for going on 11 years now. And I create a ton of different content, whether it's the podcast I have, videos, strategy guides, and cheat sheets. So if there's anything that you want to learn more on, there's a good chance I've already created it. I've been creating content for about 4 years at this point. But if not, it's always a good reason for me to be inspired to create something new. Oh, yep. And those are just the 2. So the reason why there's only 2 kids there is that was like the last family picture before COVID hit, right? And we've had 2 kids since then. And so COVID, super worried about all that. And yeah, so we just haven't had a great family picture. It's like, hey, you hold the phone, or you hold the phone whenever we kind of walk and get out and about. But yeah, my other 2 kiddos are just as cute, and basically they're about these 2 sizes right now. It's kind of crazy how quick time moves along. So 4, 2, 1, and 2 weeks in a couple of days. So it's been a lot of fun. That's probably one of the coolest things that I've experienced that I just would have never expected about how rewarding, how impactful it'd be just to kind of have little ones to be able to take care of and be responsible for. So these are the main things we're going to cover tonight. But again, I'm pretty flexible with any questions you throw at me, as well as we'll make sure we tackle things at the end. And I mentioned to Andrew at the beginning, definitely provide him and Stacy feedback as far as what you thought. It could be you like the idea, I'm not the best presenter for it, and you guys find someone else moving forward. But also you could say, hey, this was great. What about a topic like this later? And Andrew can let me know, and I can probably crank something out in a couple of days and be ready whenever he needs me to get that ready for you. But the kind of key elements that we'll be tackling is how to be financially successful. And the coolest thing about what you've all been on in the path that you're on is for some of you, it's probably going from surviving to literally thriving. And every now and then I'll see people that are in a high paying career and they just transition to a high paying career in tech. but so often I see doubling of income, tripling of income a few years after that. And so it really changes a lot of things. And you could either put the right foot forward, or you could really not take advantage of the situation and actually make things worse if you don't get a handle on what's going on and what the options and possibilities are for you. And then I'm going to also focus in on a lot of the key questions I get just from everyone and anyone I ever run into. So should I do this or should I do that? So they'll be kind of the frequently asked questions that I see. And then also a few of the things to be aware of in tech, beware in tech. And that's because there are things that with great power comes great responsibility. With great income, you can create good habits, or you could create really bad habits as well. Then at the end, we'll tackle the Q&A. Just gonna take a peek at the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything important. Yep, yeah, the income doubling is pretty mind blowing, and so it just creates a lot of opportunities, and it's really a great thing. And again, you can really do the right thing, or you can really do the wrong thing. I'll talk a little bit more about why that is. Me being a certified financial planner, having my own financial planning company, I'm required to say, hey, I don't know your individual situations and everything that applies to you. So definitely take this as educational and informative. If there's something you got to itch and you want to dive into deeper, I definitely encourage you to look more. Don't just take my word or the way I interpret things or how you are interpreting what I'm saying. Definitely dive in deeper, because there's so much more you can learn about any of these things that we'll hit on today, and definitely take advantage of the ability to ask me questions, so I can do that while we're in this meeting too. So how to be financially successful. So you actually don't need to double your income. In some situations, you don't really need to make six figures to be successful. I do have a couple clients that are under six figures, and they're actually going to retire early and do it pretty peacefully without any constraints. And then on the other end, I have clients making way more, or the higher end of six figures, 300, 400,000. And like we look and you're not going to be able to retire early. Like, you better hope that there's no layoffs or anything substantial, because things will not be a great situation. And so it's the money does help, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but there's no magic number for that six figures. Maybe mentally, you probably have some check marks to this. I've had clients that come to me initially saying, hey, I really just want to save $5 million. And then I would say, why? Like, do you need that much? And they're like, no, I just thought like that's what I need. And it's kind of been stressing me out to think I need that much. And when we dove into it, I was like, you barely spend like any of your money. You do not need $5 million to be able to do what you want to do. So let's just move that target off of that and move it to the things that matter. The biggest thing, whether it's before you fully make the transition or you do make the transition, is just establishing good habits, being disciplined. Those are really going to be the fundamental core things that you can carry with you, whether you're making 40,000, 70,000, 100,000, 300,000. It's really going to make the difference between you stressing out about things and you actually being able to enjoy life and focus on the things that matter and that you care about. And when you get down to it, it's financial success is similar to any other type of success that you've had throughout your career, and we're all here living and breathing. And so even something as basic as what I'm seeing my kids do, which is walk for the first time, start to read their first words, like they had no way of being able to do any of these things. And think about where you are at this point, whether you've fully made that transition or about to make it. You've accomplished a lot of stuff. You've overcome a lot of hurdles, and a lot of hurdles too that a lot of other people haven't been able to do or gave up at some point. So you definitely can use those past accomplishments, even though they're not financial, to just kind of break those down and say, hey, how did I make this? How did I become successful here? And I have a little bit of framework, and this is probably what you've done in the past to achieve your goals. And this is just kind of quick planning. If you were wanting to break these things out, it's super important to me. So my tagline for my business when I first started, and I think it still fits today, is take your financial confidence to the next level. And because it's really important to just be confident that you're capable of being successful, because when you're not, it's kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, nope, I'm never going to be good with money. Nope, whenever I save money, something bad's going to happen, and it's just going to take all my money away, and that's not going to help you or serve you in any way. But believing that you are going to do it, and it's going to take work and time and effort, and then also believing that you deserve that too, because that's another kind of piece of that. A lot of people be like, oh, I shouldn't be focused on money, or be I shouldn't be making this much money. I feel bad about it, and that's going to happen. It's kind of part imposter syndrome, but part also just kind of some of the weird stuff we see going on in the world. It does make us kind of think about our place in it and all of that. But at the end of the day, you are where you're at, and you're capable of doing a lot more, and you deserve everything that you're working hard to do and all the sacrifices you make. So that's step one. And once we can all agree on that, then it's very easy to start thinking about things, and then and not be focused on the money, but what are those meaningful goals? Because yeah, that $5 million target for that client, once we broke that down, it relieved them of the stress of thinking like that, oh, is he even going to be capable of that? But that's not actually what mattered to him. There's a lot of other cooler things that he's been able to focus on. And you just need to do a deep dive and find out what this is for each one of you. Most likely you've done this at various points in your life, but one thing that happens with the social media and just the busyness of life, maybe it's the busyness of trying to break into tech, we kind of get lost in and forget to think about the things that really add meaning to your life, things that add a ton of joy to your life. And sometimes there's not a huge cost associated with them, and sometimes there are going to be things like going on vacations, having some great experiences and travel, and those are usually some of the higher ones. But another important thing too is we like to take shortcuts when it comes to those goals, and we'll look to our friends, we'll look to other people that we think we should be like or emulate. And even though those goals may not really resonate with you, it's like, oh, well, maybe that's what I should be doing, or that's what I should be working on. And those tend to not be as meaningful if you haven't actually gone through the thought process of, well, why is it? And try to challenge those things too. I think it's important to always challenge, always grow, and see what still sticks and what's still important to you there. Once you've identified what those goals are, whether it's travel, whether it's retiring early, whether it's paying for college, or anything that you could tie some type of financial situation to, since this is kind of financial planning that we're focusing on today. But from there, then you can look at your resources, and those resources could be things you've already accumulated: savings, 401k, home equity. There's quite a wide range of things, but you can also take into account your future income. So what's your income going to be like to help you earn and accomplish these goals? And then once you kind of start putting these things on the map, timeline wise, well, how often are you going to want to purchase a brand new car or a used car, whatever it is that's important to you? How often do you want to travel? And one of the things is a lot of people want to do these types of things, but they don't plan for it. So they're like, oh, yep, we'll do that someday. And it's a really cool once you start saying like, oh, well, let's put it here and kind of back into it. And I imagine in tech and Collab Lab, lots of engineering, you're all problem solving at this point. You can do the same thing with your financial planning. Like, these are the things we want to get to, and then start to figure out, are you going to be on track? What things do we need to toggle, move around to make these things work? One of the biggest things I see with early career folks in tech is that, oh, I got that first real big job, and you know what? I'm that means I can buy the car. That means I can buy the house. That means I can travel all over the place. Well, you might be able to do all those things, but you're putting a lot of stress on yourself that first year, first couple of years right out of the gate. And it could really put yourself in a financial bind. If you plan stuff out and kind of space things out, you'll actually enjoy those things more, be less stressed out about it. But then you can still do all the things you want to do. You just don't have to fit it all into the same year or all into the same month. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. And it's because too, like, you put yourself through a lot of hard work and you want to reward yourself. So there's all these different kind of conflicted things, and you definitely should reward yourself. And it just helps to have that map of your goals and make sure that it's what you really want, because once you have those things visually in your radar, where you're focused on them a little bit more, really easy to say no to some of those random things that come up. Amazon, anything else that you can think of where you could just be like, oh, there's an ad on my phone. Next thing you know, it's at your house the next day. Those are really easy to do when you don't have goals coming up that you are saving for or trying to work really hard for. And once you have those things, it's a lot easier to be like, do I want to buy a brand new pair of sneakers? Like I just bought ones last month. Maybe I would prefer to put this in my travel savings account and break these things out so you can kind of see your progress as you're leveling up towards those different milestones. And so, yeah, once you have that plan of attack, like break those things into smaller milestones. People overwhelm themselves. Maybe it is a 5 million that someone needs. You don't need that this month or this next year. It's, hey, are we going to be there at the time you need it? Which in his case was going to be for retirement and things like that. And so that's it. It just helps you get this all out there. It's the same as when we get caught in those different loops, just some random things that bug us, random things we get stuck on, where if we don't say things out loud, if we don't put things on paper, journal, write, whatever it is that you do to kind of help keep moving and not get stuck on stuff, planning helps all of that. You kind of break past some of those constraints, some of those roadblocks, just by getting it out of your head and kind of seeing, well, what actually makes sense to you. I'm just gonna jump into the chat here. And Andrew, if you don't mind, I'll actually have you kind of keep track of any questions that come in. And then if, as we kind of go through it, you can let me know, like, hey, it looks like there's a question we could probably tackle.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. We're just mostly just making cracking jokes in the chat.
No, it looks good. I'm glad that everyone's engaged. One of the most interesting things, and you may have heard this already, but money does impact happiness, as is kind of super rudimentary chart shows, but it doesn't impact it as much as you think. So what happens is, as your income goes up, the happiness goes up pretty quick early on in the lower income bracket. So your first job in high school, oh, I just made like $5,000 for the summer, or $5,000 for the year. That's a lot of money. Their happiness level jumps up. You get into real life, that's not going to pay the bills. So you start to get 30, 40, 50,000. Like, yeah, this is helping a lot, making a big deal. You get to 100,000. It's not, the happiness doesn't jump up the same amount. It's not a straight line up. It really curves and kind of starts to get smoothed out. And where you can get bigger bumps and bigger achievements of that happiness as your income goes up is to be able to focus on things like experience, things with time. So when I think of time and where I think about some of the things that my clients, I've helped them kind of shed, especially if they are really good savers, is to remind them that they are on track, probably ahead of the game. And if there's things that they don't enjoy doing with their time, like I had someone come and mow our lawn because we had a baby and I just wasn't having the time. I was stressing out about it. Like I paid a kid like $40 and he was happy as can be, made his day, and I feel so relieved from it. So that time savings, I got a lot more happiness out of using my income towards that than buying a Starbucks coffee or something. So figure out that, giving back philanthropically. That's why we have the mentors here in the Collab Lab too. Like there's a lot of benefit. If you're one of the mentees, you probably like feel bad sometimes, like, oh, I can't believe they're like volunteering and taking the time, but they are getting stuff out of this too. Like it feels really good. And so that's something too that you can use that income for. Maybe you don't have the time because you're working and you're new in your career and you're super focused on that. You might be able to contribute a little bit more than you would have if you didn't have these types of income in dollars. So there's a few different ways you can kind of eke out and make that income be a little bit more powerful and rewarding for you and kind of where you're at in life. So from surviving to thriving. So there's a lot of stuff, right, where money can go. And there's probably things where if you didn't have the income that you really wanted or wish that you probably had earlier on in your career, you're probably struggling with keeping a savings account funded, keeping down debt that wasn't being a really stressful situation. You might not have been able to save into retirements at all. This might be the first time you are running into like, hey, I got an employer and they're going to give me free money in a 401k match. There's things that you can protect against that it's really hard because it costs money earlier on in your career when you don't have necessarily the same type of income that you'll have in tech, to be able to purchase things like life insurance, have the best type of health insurance and things like that. One of the last things as far as the thriving piece is, if you're getting higher income, you're going to have to pay more taxes, unfortunately. There is a lot of value in planning. That's actually where I feel like I stand apart from most people, because I do help my clients with the tax side. Is like, there's ways you can navigate this and make sure you understand it and control it a little bit more. So you might be in the phase where making that transition, you're able to catch up, start to build up an emergency savings, or start to pay down high interest debt like credit card debt and stuff like that, or start throwing more money into a retirement account. Or maybe you were doing fine, like maybe you were good, things were perfectly fine, but tech is just really awesome and you just really want to jump in. And just so happens that maybe your income goes up as well. So maybe you create yourself a little bit more wiggle room, some breathing room, where basically the way I see that is it allows you to make a few more mistakes or just test things out a little bit more than if your income's in the 40 or $50,000 range. You can still be financially successful, but you can't really make too many mistakes. You can't have a lot of trips to the emergency room or an extended time off from work and stuff like that, where a lot of my clients who had been boot camp grads, they're making double income and they're like, I don't need this much. So they're able to catch up on all these things. But then they also can take off and do sabbaticals for a year or two every now and then. And so that was a goal that a couple of my clients have mentioned, super important to them. They would have never been able to do it without kind of making this jump into tech. Retirement with the 401k plans, that's often a new thing too. I see where people just say, you know what, like I never really had access to something like this. How does it work? And feel free to ask any questions on the 401k plans and all of that fun stuff. And we will move forward. Let's see, any questions? Does it look like? Oh, Caitlin, once you paid off your boot camp, what's your list? Is it the
more like giving to charities and stuff? I think that's actually one of the things I'm most excited about for like increasing my income, is being able to contribute financially to places.
Yeah, and you're gonna get more out of that, I guarantee it, than just throwing it at something else that could be completely random. Awesome. Yeah. What other goals do you all have? And you can use the chat, or you can kind of jump into the conversation. Like, what are you excited about being able to do, whether it's now or in the near future?
I guess for me is, if whenever I land my first tech role, to be able to finally set myself up for retirement. I haven't been able to do that, so I'm really excited to at least start going down that path, and setting up something for my son as well. So that gets me excited. And I have to agree with Caitlin, and finally giving back financial, like money-wise, to like donate to organizations. So
yeah,
those are probably my top things.
Awesome. Yep. And Collab Lab is expanding, right? So they'll need mentees. If you're obviously busy with time, then donations and stuff, whether in just an easy way to kind of connect that. But yeah, it can be any organization, anything that's important to you, really, really makes a big deal. So if you have family that had certain situations and there's a nonprofit that focuses on that, really makes a big deal to be able to do those types of things. Perfect. So we're in this or that section. So this is just a funny way to break up for the subject and kind of title of it. But the first one is term life insurance versus whole life insurance. I get very passionate about this because there's a lot of people that try to sway you one way versus another. I think term life works for a majority of people. I'd say for most people. And one of the nice things about the term life insurance is it's going to be a lower cost, so you can get more benefit for a lower cost. You can really pinpoint it to a point where you feel confident in your life that your assets and resources are going to hit a certain point. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is with your income breaking into tech is your income's going to skyrocket, your net worth is going to skyrocket, any type of investments, like these things are only going to build up over time. And there is going to be a point in the future, if you're doing things right financially, where you don't need life insurance because your house has equity, your 401k is very large at that point, and savings accounts fully funded. It's just one thing that a lot of people don't realize is you don't need life insurance. Hopefully you don't need life insurance your whole life. On the other side, a reason to support the whole life insurance side of the argument is if there's some things where it does make a ton of sense. So if you have like a special needs child, or just even someone in your family that like, hey, I'm responsible for them, whether it's you personally or your income that you're making is using to support someone. And if you pass away, they're going to need that support the rest of your life. That's one reason why you might need that whole life insurance. So usually it's something with like a disability or a special needs type situation. Some business owners need it too. So if any of you are ever looking to start a business and you have business partners, whole life insurance can help with things if someone passes away for the business to continue, spouses to be paid appropriately for the value of the business. Yeah, you never heard. So yeah, you definitely do not need life insurance, hopefully your whole life. And yeah, it's most of the people that talk about life insurance are truly life insurance people, where the commission side that they receive for the whole life is this big, and the term life insurance is this big. So it's been a huge problem for me because I help my clients analyze their situation as far as how much they need. I say, hey, yep, this is what you want to go to your insurance agent and let them know. And then their insurance agent tries pointing them to the other thing. And whole life insurance can be a lot more complex too. They add a lot of bells and whistles. I don't want to be too political, but there's just like lobbyists, and there's lobbyists for everything, but lobbyists for life insurance companies are one of the most funded lobbyists in the world. So there's lots of things that they do there that maybe they want to get away with if there wasn't so much pressure on the political system to kind of help them get away with some of that stuff. But
can I ask? I don't know much about it, but my partner actually talked to some financial people at one point, and they were trying to get her to buy life insurance. I think, if I recall correctly, they were saying that it kind of holds value in some way. It's not quite an investment, maybe it doesn't like necessarily grow in value, but it like you can kind of keep some of your equity there or something. I don't know if I'm even explaining it, but
yep. So it can accumulate cash value at some point. The problem is it's not going to do as well as like investments actually would. So a lot of times they'll say like, hey, this whole life insurance is an investment for your family or an investment for like future growth, and it will outperform your 401k. Like, it's not true. They use a lot of very aggressive numbers in their analysis to try to make those things look like that. And the reality is there's like a small window of time. At some point, it looks like it gets close to making sense, but the way life insurance is, it's just super expensive. And so there's like a window of time you have to die and pass away in order for it to truly make sense. And before that or after that, it just becomes really costly. And what you can do, because of the huge cost difference, is term life insurance tends to be way less than the whole life insurance. So you get the insurance you need for way lower cost, and the difference that you're saving from if you would have went with the whole life, you're able to invest that in your 401k, you're in a Roth account. You can even invest it outside of a retirement account, and the growth from that, and you get the protection you need now for the life insurance, and you have that flexibility on the growth of your asset, those investments you make. So it's called buy term and invest the rest is kind of what a lot of people say there.
that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. And yeah, it's super unfortunate. And those people aren't bad people. I have to remind myself, like, they're humans, they're people just like you and I. What happens is insurance companies are really good at saying, hey, this is how you do this. This is the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody needs it. You're going to help everyone so much by them having it. And so they're just really trained, and they're not really encouraged to be like thought leaders or independent thinkers. And they're more of like sell, but they definitely reinforce and make their employees think that like this is the best thing ever and it's always going to be the best thing ever, which it's just not, unfortunately, for a lot of those situations. Perfect. And you can tell I get a little bit heated on that because I see it so many times. Like I'm glad that for my clients I'm able to push back and kind of illustrate and show them that the difference. This one's a super important question I get all the time. So should I focus on debt repayment or should I make 401k contributions? So the thought process is you're probably going to do both of this. You'll first want to max out your 401k contributions where you get the employer match. So sometimes it's low, maybe it's 3%. You want to do at least whatever it takes to get that match from your employer. So if you have to put 3% of your income to get the employer match, and Andrew throws in there, it's free money. So it's really amazing. It's 100% return basically guaranteed at that point from your employer matching that. And so you want to do that chunk first because 100% return is a good deal. Then after that, if you have really high interest at, so credit cards, anything in the 20%, anything in the double digit numbers really is so far such a huge number in terms of interest and cost to you. That's where your funds, I tend to have a lot of my clients go next. So knock out the credit card debt, anything else that's just a really high interest rate. I know those boot camp student loans are not the cheapest. And was it you, Caitlin, that said student loans is working on? Look into, I don't know how far you've already paid those things down, but sometimes you can go and do a student loan refinance and go from like a 11 or 12% to like 4% or 5%. And even if your plan is to knock it out in a year or two, you'll still save a decent amount. And if you go to, there's so many of them, I don't know. I don't want to steer you to the wrong one. All of a sudden it's like a spammy site, but if you do like a general search, there's 2 or 3 different people that kind of create all these different offers. And sometimes you'll get like a bonus $200 cash back for refinancing your student loan. So yeah, definitely research that if that sounds enticing. If you're going to pay it off in the next month or two, not worth the logistics, but yeah, then you really want to focus on those higher debt payments. Mortgage, don't worry about paying down your mortgage if you get a 3% or even a 4% interest rate. If you have a car auto loan that's like 3%, 4%, again, it's probably not the end of the world if you don't focus on paying it off any faster. You always want to make the minimum payments because you don't want that to report on your credit score. But that's kind of what I like to think about is what's the possible return long-term. And so the 401k matching contribution from your employer, that's 100% plus the potential for it to grow. And you can kind of do your own research to see, well, what could it potentially grow in a given year on average? And then the debt is really what we're comparing that. So if you believe the 401k is going to be a better investment for you compared to the interest rate you're paying, then that's when you start to circle back and do more than just the employer match on the 401k contributions. Right. So rent versus buying a home. So there's a reason for both. The renting one makes the most sense when, especially maybe even for you all now, because you might not know if this is going to be your forever place. Like you might be out of here in a month or two, whether it's a different town, different state, different country sometimes. That would be a reason maybe to just rent for a little bit longer. Once you know where you think that this will probably be home base for a good 3 years, then that's when the buying side of the decision starts to become super valuable. I don't know if any of you have gone through the home buying process in the last year or so. Things are pretty intense right now. I wouldn't shy away from that if you are in the position and you know that it would be good for you to purchase a home. But yeah, the reason why buying tends to be my favorite thing to recommend when people are in that part of their life where it's a nice kind of stable area that they plan to be in for a while, is because home values have been increasing pretty steadily, pretty intensely. And some people think, especially a lot of the people it looks like here in this group, remember probably 2008, 2009 financial crisis. Home values did get hit, but if you look historically, that's only happened like 2 other times in like the last 100 years. And so it's a really kind of just a unique event that doesn't occur too often. Home values might go down 1% or 2%, but that's not really going to make a big difference to you. If you can afford your monthly payment, it still made sense to buy it. And long term, it's going to recover whatever that small little dip is that you'll experience. Even with those big dips that did occur in 2008, 2009, definitely location dependent. Obviously, Michigan got hit really hard and they're finally recovering. But most places in America rebounded after about 4 years or so. And so that's why I say that 3 to 5 year window for if you think you'll be staying home base, it really supports that the reason to purchase, because home values are really great and flexible. At some point, if you do just stay at that home forever, you pay it off, and all of a sudden you don't have a payment, a rent payment or a mortgage payment. You still have some property tax, you still have to pay your property insurance, but that's going to be pretty minimal at that point. Yep. Andrew said that's his dream for paying off your home. Yep. And yeah, it's pretty great right now with the interest rates being so low. I like to kind of look at the whole picture and tell my clients if they don't need to pay it off sooner, because the interest rates again are so low, there's actually a lot of benefits to just having this low cost of mortgage, and because you're able to focus on other things that are important to you now, like travel, saving for retirement, other goals that will be more impactful if you're able to focus on them rather than like doubling your mortgage payments. And there's some other reasons too. I think that was my last podcast episode, the 5 reasons to not pay off your mortgage early. If any of you or podcast people want to check that out. This one's really important to me. The time versus money. I kind of mentioned I had someone come mow my lawn. Best investment I've ever made. I had someone clean up my dog stuff too, because that was a lot of time it took, and it wasn't the most pleasant thing. And so when it comes down to this, I think you first have to be able to afford it. It can't, whatever it is that you're considering spending money on, you have to be able to afford it. It can't impact your life negatively because you're stressed out about the money that you're going to be applying towards this thing, this service, whatever it is that you're considering spending money on. But time is more valuable than money. Once you kind of get to that point where you're making more than enough, then you just have to make sure it kind of fits. It supports kind of your life. And then you also, with the time that you are saving, the time that you're not having to waste on whatever that is that you're purchasing or leveraging, make sure you're living your best life. Like make sure you're actually enjoying your life, because we can have people do things for us and still not be super happy or still not be doing the things we want to. And it's very easy again to just get busy in life and forget like, hey, how the heck did I end up over here? Because you just kind of keep your head down and you're tunneling. All of a sudden you realize like, oh, I'm not happy with where I'm working, or whatever, those different things that can kind of come up, or it's been forever since I've gone on a trip and had fun, and those types of things. So to me, time is more important than money. It's all a balancing act though, for sure. Like no one has enough money to do everything they want. Even that Elon Musk guy who created Tesla, he had to borrow a ton of money for the longest time. I don't think he's quite borrowing at this point in the game, but there was a point where he had a ton, still needed to borrow and leverage a lot of things, because even he didn't have enough money to do all the things that he wanted to do and place funds where he wanted to place them. So no one's ever going to have enough money to just do everything and anything, which is why you want to balance it, why you want to focus on your goals and be really intentional with what's going to add a ton of value for you. So things to be aware of, lifestyle creep. So Caitlin, you said your income doubled, right? Yep. So your expenses could easily double. Like there might not be that much noticeable difference, as far as like you might have some more things in your house, you might have the next upgraded level car and things, and none of that stuff is bad or wrong. The biggest thing is just to make sure that you are having that balance, making sure that you still are thinking about what's driving your happiness, what's driving value and the experiences you want to have in life. Partially because we don't even know like what tomorrow or the next year looks like. COVID's been a huge highlight for like hey, there's some random events outside of our control. And then even just things like car accidents and stuff, like there's so many things where if you're not living your best life now, or at least kind of positioning yourself, I don't know why where anyone's waiting to kind of take control of that. Yep, balancing act, giving yourself permission. And then, yeah, the lifestyle creep. And the cool thing is when there are these big jumps, especially as you're approaching this, I know, Yolanda, you said you're looking to make that first break in. If there's a big income jump, you already know you can live off of the income that you had before. Maybe it wasn't the most extravagant life, but you're alive, you seem healthy. And so like, you know that you're good there. And so the best thing you can do is start to set these things aside. Well, how much should I be putting in a savings account? How much should I be throwing in a 401k? How much should I be setting aside for my child? And making sure that you're kind of doing those things. Because once you realize like, oh, I'm on track for all these things. Hey, look, I still have some money left over. And that's where you get to go. And your income, I imagine if you've worked hard enough to get here, most likely you're going to work harder and continue to kind of enjoy kind of your chosen career path at this point. Your income's going to continue to go up. And if you were already on track before, it just gives you a ton of flexibility, gives you a ton of potential and opportunities. There's a lot of things that might come out in the future that you never dreamt of that would have been possible. Something you never would have dreamt of that would be important to you. I had no clue I was going to start a business. Like, or I guess there was a small clue, but I didn't really think we were going to do it. But because I just happened to be good at saving, my wife happened to be good at saving, and we kind of accumulated this stuff. And I just wasn't happy with how most of the financial planning services do things. So it's like, hey, let's do this. Worst thing happens, I go and get a job, but I would have never been able to do it. It took me the full. So this year's been really awesome. The first 3 years have been a super roller coaster. Like I would have never survived the 3 years if we didn't have the runaway, if we didn't have the savings, and I didn't know any of that was going to be important to me. But I was doing the right things. I was kind of focused on the things that were important to me. And when this opportunity possibility came up that I never dreamt or thought of, like, hey, you can do that, or I could do that, and whatever it is for you, like maybe you do want to take a sabbatical, maybe someone important to you gets some crazy news and they might not be around forever. Like, what if you just want to spend a year and just hang out or just fly them around? Like, if you are doing the right things and you have a lot of flexibility to do things that you would have never dreamt of. So the lifestyle creep thing, it's important because you already know that you can live off of what you had before, and now everything coming forward is going to be extra. And if you have those goals kind of outlined and you're doing it right out of the gate, the worst thing you can do is start a bad habit of like, hey, I'll figure it out after year one. Because what's going to happen is you're going to be used to that year one income, and that jump to year two isn't going to be as significant. Technically, that could be a lie. I have a lot of clients where income doubled the first 3 years. And yeah, it's been crazy to see. They're the ones that are going to be doing the sabbaticals. And so like, yeah, we're not spending a ton of money, and they're not going to spend a ton of money on that too. They're going to backpack all over South America and do like crazy stuff like that. So yeah, a whole year without income, and they're still going to be on track for all the other stuff that's important. Layoffs is a big deal. In tech, it happens quite often. Right now, there's a huge hiring rush. So lots of new jobs, lots of new companies, lots of money out there to fund these things. But what happens, all of a sudden a company runs into a wall, like, hey, a competitor beat them out, or there wasn't the opportunity that they thought were there. And you just get blindsided one day. So layoffs are a big deal. Even well-established companies, where I live in Colorado, we have Intel, we have HP. Those companies laid people off annually on a regular basis. Yeah, Andrew's been laid off. And so, yeah, it's one of the things where if you're living full tilt on that income and you don't have those resources laid back on, that's where you can actually be in a worse spot financially than someone only making 40,000 that runs into trouble. Unemployment will at least cover a good chunk of that. Unemployment is never going to cover dev's salary, especially mid-career salary. So you're going to get a small amount from unemployment, and the rest you're still going to want to do the same things a lot of times. Like you still have the same groceries you buy, still want to do things on the weekends. You don't want to just become a hermit just because you lost a job. And so that's where having that emergency savings is going to help in those situations. Lack of benefits, that's dependent on companies. So lots of startups sometimes are just heavily invested in, hey, we're going to give you a salary. You should be able to live off of it. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to give you any type of benefits. We're not going to be able to give you that 401k match. We're not going to be able to give you health insurance. And so that might be something that you run into if you're going to like a startup type situation, or maybe start out as an independent contractor to get experience. So that's something you want to be aware of with different opportunities that may come up. Definitely very different worlds between startup life and like a well-established company at that point. And we can dive into the Q&A session. So even if I didn't even highlight something that you've always had questions about financially, go ahead and throw it at me, and I'll do my best to kind of give you my thoughts on it.
I got a question. I'm not well versed in the financial realm. So whenever I get my first big tech job, who's like, is it, I think there's like different types of financial planners, like fiduciaries. Yep. And some, sorry, I'm like really don't know. So like, what's the
more
best
than most people?
So like, what's the best, what's the best way to find someone who can help me to, you know, solidify my future without feeling like I'm being scammed?
Yep. So yeah, I'm also another thing where I get a little bit heated about, just because there's a huge wide range. There's people that can call themselves financial gurus and not be registered, not regulated in any ways. So you really do want to make sure you do your due diligence. I would say that the best thing is if you happen to have friends that have a financial advisor, financial planner, you can ask them questions. You do want to look for a fiduciary, which basically means they're going to put your best interests ahead of their own. One of the big issues there is there was a huge government push where they were going to make everyone be required to be fiduciaries, but it's still not the same standard as what it used to be. So it just kind of watered down that meaning. So you could go to almost any financial advisor right now and they say, yeah, I'm a fiduciary. And then basically they're like, hey, I'm going to sell you this, or I'm going to get you here, and you might never hear from them again. So I'll send, because I'm in the Slack group, I will post, I created like a little ebook of the 10 questions you should ask your financial planner. I would say work with a financial planner, not a financial advisor. It's, again, some people can just kind of claim to be financial planners, even though they're not. But the 10 questions that I'll have there will definitely help you whittle that down. And I'd say ask a lot of questions, make sure that they're going to be involved. They're going to be able to answer questions for you as you're navigating throughout your career. Let them know what's important to you and the goals. And if they're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do the investments, well, that's not going to help you level up. That's not going to give you the financial confidence you need. And yeah, unfortunate, that's a majority of the people. So yeah, in that booklet, I have 2 websites, and I don't know if it's a .org or not, but one of them's NAPA. So that they're all going to be, they tend to be mostly good financial planners, and that list is really small compared to if you go to any general directory where there's like thousands in your neighborhood. So NAPFA, even here in Northern Colorado, I think for like a 50-mile radius, there's like 5 of us or 6 of us. And then there's another group that's really awesome. It's the one I use to leverage and kind of get the resources I need to compete against the big companies. They're called XY Planning Network. So they have a search database too. So you can look to see if you need someone local, if you need someone over any particular thing. So I mentioned like special needs, like there's different niches. My niche is tech professionals, and like you can find what you're looking for and then interview a handful. And just because you decide like, hey, you're going to help me, doesn't mean they have to be there for your life, especially if they're not holding up their end of the bargain. If you just feel lackluster from the relationship and the value you're getting, like I never expect any of my clients to stick with me long term, unless they're feeling like they're getting that value from me for sure. I'll make sure I get that little ebook that I created for you guys. Any other questions?
I have a question. I don't know if you have any thoughts about how to evaluate compensation packages, especially in tech. I know like there are companies that offer equity, or like you were talking about some startups might, not have benefits or something. Like if someone is trying to choose between companies with different offerings, do you have any thoughts about how to compare those?
Yep. So at the end of the day, if the company has equity and that equity is real value, so they're already publicly traded and those stock options already have value, just you could go and find out what that's going to be as of today. That's really easy to evaluate. So if you're comparing those two companies side by side, it's like, hey, this is the equity here, this is equity here. They're very likely to both actually be real numbers that are impactful. Once you start comparing, hey, this is a real company that's traded, I'm getting equity and I know that's going to become true value. And this is a startup, they might not even exist a year from now. With that, I would say you just have to be very comfortable knowing that that's very unlikely money. And it depends on the company. Some companies are further along, they've got a lot of funding and they're a year away. One of my clients just joined a company where it's like, yeah, next year we're most likely gonna go public. And so that reduces a lot of risk. Then, hey, you're like one of the first people on the team. We haven't really got a product yet. Like we just have an idea. Like, so you kind of have to look at it from that process. You have to look at the company as a whole and the feasibility, and then you have to kind of weed out like all the excitement too, like, oh, this is going to be life changing or world changing, and just break it down. Well, are both of them going to give you what you need to live a good life and survive? Then which one are you going to be happier with, I think would be the next thing, because you can't really weight that equity on that company that doesn't really have any likelihood of that equity becoming real. And it's kind of like a lottery ticket at that point. Like, hey, I'm going to give you 100 lottery tickets if you come and join me and work at my company. Like, yeah, I'll probably win like $30 out of 100 lottery tickets. I'm probably not going to win the million. And so like, if you're comfortable with that and you're still excited about that, there's, like I mentioned, like you don't have to be with me. You don't have to make any kind of lifelong decisions for any of these things. So you could give it a try if you're really excited and you think it's a good possibility. There's really no downside. And especially over the last handful of years, and Andrew probably has more insight to this, but what I've seen is my clients have been job hopping like crazy sometimes because of bad fit, not enough growth opportunities, but crazy income just to even jump. That client that I mentioned doubled. Like that's been in a 3-year time span. So he's been at a company for a few months, wasn't happy, got huge opportunity to kind of jump around. But yeah, it's not expected. It's not going to be a huge black spot, I wouldn't think, if you go to a company and it's not what you thought and you're not happy about that, and there's another company kind of knocking down your door to have you join them.
I don't disagree with anything you said, Lucas. The thing I would add to it though is like sometimes going to a startup is actually, it can pay off longer term. So even if say, stock options don't work out or something, that company has business, you're making connections, but you're also at most small startups, you're having to do everything. Like you're learning at this like super rapid pace, be really intense. It can set you up actually for later in your career. You've had these kind of experiences that are really hard to get any other way. So, if you have the opportunity to join, it's like, what's the saying is like, if somebody offers you a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask like, where is the seat? Let's get on the rocket ship. Yeah. So sometimes it can really accelerate your career.
Yeah, when I imagine too, even like the networking, like you might not have as many people, but the relationship is going to be so much more intense. Like someone says, hey, Caitlin was a rock star. They're more confident about saying that than if you were number one of like 20,000 and they may have only ran into you once, where if you're knee deep in it and it's a smaller, more intense team, I imagine that could just have a lot of value to you, just more intense connections. Yep. Yeah. and that's the piece too, is like if either one you're going to be financially successful. That's one of the cool things about having your finances under your control. Like, hey, I already know I'm doing the right thing, so I can take this chance. For me, it was launching a company and not having any income. For you, it's I might take a small dip in income, but it's not going to impact your life or your goals. Or maybe you tweak things around, but because you're disciplined, you're going to make those tweaks and still be better off for it.
Any other questions? Julia, you've been pretty quiet. Do you have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I am also not so aware of financial stuff. Yeah, like I don't know so much about it. Yeah, thank you so much for the information.
Yeah, and a lot of people have kind of negative feelings because they don't have kind of that financial foundation, and it is not your fault. Like, I only know this because I started my first job out of high school was at a bank, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then they gave me benefits. I was like, oh, this stuff is cool. And I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. So I just dove into it. But out of school, just out of life, like most places, I'm seeing it's getting a little bit better. And it definitely depends on the area. The affluent areas that maybe have like higher incomes, they're teaching this stuff in school, where other areas where maybe not the greatest areas to grow up or live are not still being taught these things. But we were never taught this stuff as children, or even if we had like an economics class, it was like, oh, there was a week of balancing a budget, and none of it really made sense at the time. Maybe we had a part-time paying job, but it just didn't really make a ton of sense. And so do not feel bad. Everyone's learning at different capacities. And one thing, if you're going to work with a financial planner, make sure that they're happy and excited to kind of help give you this new confidence and education. Because if they're annoyed for any reason, like that's to me, I would say that's a big X mark. I'd want to make sure that you're not afraid or feeling pressured that you can't ask the questions that you really need to feel better about what's going on with your financial life.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, do you recommend Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich? It's so popular.
Yep, I've heard a lot about it. I've never heard anyone say any bad things about it. So I would say it probably is a good recommendation at this point. I think it's one of the top recommended books. I'm not a big reader, unfortunately, but I do like a lot of my research as needed. So I did my IRIS education to become a certified financial planner. Then everything else, it's like, hey, this is a unique situation. I'll dive into what I need. But I have heard, especially for people that don't have that baseline of just kind of financial knowledge and literacy, that that book has been one of the top recommended ones. And again, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it.
Cool. And we're right at an hour, so I think it's maybe a good time to wrap up. But I see you have information there for how to connect with people. I put in the chat your actual Twitter account. So
Perfect.
but this has been great. I mean, it's an area that it's so important, but like we're saying in the chat, you don't get this in school. So it's really confusing. There's jargon and all this stuff. So it's really great just to have a little bit of clarity. Should we pay attention to it? So thank you.
Yeah, yep. And let me know, because I have different content on like stock options. So the RSUs, the non-qualified stock options. I think I started writing one on incentive stock options. I don't know if I ever finished that, but I have all kinds of things out there. So a lot of times too, it's like, hey, even if we're not going to work together ever, I just want to help people get the information they need. And because I've already created a ton, it's really easy for me to share a piece of that, and you can kind of get your ball rolling on that. Yeah, RSUs, any type of equity, even if it's not a startup, can be super sizable. One of my clients who's later on in her career, she just got a job where her stock options are going to be double her income. So she's going to get paid like $225, and then her stock options on an annual basis is going to be like $275 or something crazy. Like you have to be higher in your organization in order for those things to really be given to you in large doses and large portions. But definitely in a startup, like a lot of people are at those higher levels just because there's not that many levels to begin with. And so you think about Airbnb, you think about Tesla, Uber, all these companies that have gone public, they have become millionaires, even like someone that's only been with them a few months before they actually truly became public. So yeah, it can be sizable money, but yeah, it's going to be easier for you to acknowledge to you like, hey, is this company like just founded last week, or has this thing been around and it's just kind of biding its time before it really shoots to the moon.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming. And we'll post a video so everyone else who wasn't able to be here is able to kind of catch up on it too. But yeah, this was fantastic. Thanks so much, Lucas.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you all. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions.
All right, great. Thanks everybody. See you later.
Have a great night.